Hi there. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome, everyone. Here we are, Up to Speed Live, a special edition today as we will be talking about women in business, specifically the sports industry. We've got a great lineup ahead for you. I'm not going to steal too much of Tami Erwin's thunder as we get into this, but a quick lay of the land here for you. If you have any questions throughout, we want to make this an interactive session. You can go to slido.com and use code WIB to get your questions in. Also watching the feeds on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our CEO of Verizon Business, Tami Erwin, to take the panel away. Tami, have a good day with this one.
All right, Jeremy, thanks so much. Great to see you back on Up to Speed, and really excited to host the third episode in our Women in Business discussions here on Up to Speed with three incredibly talented women who are leading in their field and in sports in particular. We're going to hear from Reidy Anderson today, who is part of NFL. Lots going on in NFL. She's Chief Revenue Officer there, and really terrific to work with in our partnership there. We're going to hear from Baird, who's the commissioner at the National Women's Soccer League. So lots happening in women's soccer, and how great to hear about women in sports. And then Kim Davis, who's the senior EVP of Social Impact, Growth and Legislative Affairs. Big, long, meaty title for the NHL, and they've just wrapped up an incredibly exciting season. And as I've had a chance to dialogue with these women, we're going to talk about a couple of key topics here today. We're going to talk about what's happening in sports, because I know that's on your mind, and we're all excited to have a bit of a distraction from all things COVID. But we're also going to hear from these leaders about how they in their industry really pivoted in a real-time environment to transform so that they could show up in a very different environment with COVID. They've also dealt head-on with some of the social and racial injustice issues that we're all working through right now. And so really excited to hear from them. And then they're going to tell us a little bit about their leadership journey. How did they get where they are, particularly in very male-dominated fields? What is it about their leadership characteristics that have enabled them to be successful and to scale to where they are? Before I turn it over to them to do a quick intro of themselves, I do want to thank our partners, CircleAround and the National Association of Women Business Owners. These have been partners that have been with us on this journey as we, Verizon, look to say, how do we help businesses reemerge, reimagine, and as the fog lifts from COVID, redefine what success looks like. I'm incredibly proud of all the V-teamers that have worked side by side with our customers to make sure that we showed up in a crisis. And now as we look to reimagine how we partner with them in the recovery environment, really excited about the work that we've done with our partners. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, talk a little about the sport they represent, that they're passionate about. And I've said, give me one thing that we wouldn't find on your CV. So, Renie, I'm going to kick it off to you. Let's talk NFL.
All right, great, Tami. Thanks so much. Hi, guys. I'm Reidy Anderson. I am the Chief Revenue Officer here at the NFL and our EVP of our partnerships. I've been at the NFL for 15 years. We are going into week 4 of football, and I know everybody is really excited. It's a little bit 1 week at a time. We did make some announcements today. We'll be holding off on that Titans-Steelers game. As COVID has come into our locker room, and we're working through that every week and every day. And so for Titans fans, don't fear, we will be rescheduling that game at a later date, but it's something that we're focused on clearly every day. What you won't find on my CV, when I was young, I was a gymnast, a competitive gymnast. And every year of my life, so I'm 45, the last 20 years, I've been once a year, I will go outside and do a round off back handspring. My first thing is I get out my insurance card, so I know where that is in case of injury. And then I do it. And it gets a little harder every year, but thankfully I've still got it. So I'm hopeful like 80, 90, it's still going to be there. So that's my thing.
All right. That's awesome. Hold that insurance card close. Hold your phone close, but really impressive. Renie, thank you for sharing, and thank you for the incredible partnership that we have with the NFL. Kim, I'm going to come to you next. Let's talk all things hockey. What a season it's been.
It has, Tami. Thank you again for having me. I've got responsibility at the NHL as the Senior Executive Vice President of Social Impact, Growth, and Legislative Affairs for our youth hockey ecosystem and how that connects to our fandom journey. I have responsibility for all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, including how our game is growing, particularly with multicultural fans, but growing across millennials and Gen Zers. And I have responsibility for our relationships in both Ottawa, Canada, and Washington, D.C. from a legislative perspective. I've been with the league now almost 3 years, after having spent about 30 years in financial services, most of that time with JP Morgan Chase in a variety of both revenue and staff roles. The last role being head of corporate responsibility and president of the JP Morgan Chase Foundation. So, lots of experience outside of the sports industry, but having an exciting time in the hockey league. Something people don't know about me that's not on my CV is that I'm a concert pianist, performed a lot during my first 18 years and pretty much burned out. And so now I play for my personal pleasure, but that is something in my background.
A gymnast, a pianist. It's pretty spectacular. And Kim, there's a reason you've got a big title. You've got a big responsibility. And I'm so happy you raised the topic of social and racial injustice. And what do we do to really create equality? We're going to come back to that topic because it's so important for every one of us right now and for the world at large. So thank you for that. I'm sorry we don't have time to hear you play the piano today. That would be awesome. Okay, Lisa, over to you. Let's talk soccer.
Well, I'm Lisa Baird. I'm rookie commissioner of the National Women's Soccer League. I've spent my life around the latter half of my career around all kinds of sports. I'm an alumni of the NFL and the Olympics, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic movement. It's been an incredible season for National Women's Soccer. We were the first league to return to play on June 26th. And when we ended our season on July 27th, because I think we went in thinking, let's do a tournament, let's figure that out, do it in the bubble, and we were virus free as well. We then connected with our owners and our players, and we decided to put on a second season, our fall series. We're in the middle of the fall series right now, and we're now learning not only how to do sport in a bubble, but how to do sport with home and away. And we've had to scramble a couple of times. We haven't had to reschedule games because we have a very innovative broadcast and production facility that gives us the ability to move things around very quickly. But it has been a challenging year for us at us. One thing people don't know about me, I was born in Aruba. So I was born on a small Caribbean island, and there are moments, in fact, longer moments, that returning to life in the Caribbean sounds pretty appealing.
Wow, I think we could all take a trip there right now and feel really terrific about that. Lisa, thank you for sharing. And one of the things that I think is so in common with all three of your stories is how you and how your organizations have had to really reimagine doing things differently as a result of COVID. We've been partners in some of that work with many of you as we think about how do we think about what that virtual experience looks like. Guru and the Verizon media team have done a lot of great work there. And then as we begin to reimagine, what does it look like coming back into a stadium? How do we create a safe environment? But I know for all three of you, you've had to, with your teams, really lean into a different kind of leadership to reimagine what success looks like today and then reimagine tomorrow. Kim, maybe start with what that's looked like for you as a leader and perhaps how you lead differently as a result of the experience we've been through over the last several months.
Sure. I'd love to look at this through the lens of what we've been experiencing over the past 8 months, both with the health pandemic and, as I referred to it, the racial pandemic and the implications of that on our sport and the kind of social bravery that's been required of our leadership as we've worked through this. And it's very uncharted for our sport. What I have been able to lean into is a set of skills and competencies, I think, that I acquired during my time in financial services, having gone through 9 mergers and acquisitions. I think I became very comfortable with the uncomfortable. being able to operate through ambiguity, being able to be nimble during times of change. And so I think that skill set has served me well over the past 8 months. For our sport, I think what's been amazing is when I joined 3 years ago, I often said to the commissioner that the change that was going to be required around our culture was no doubt going to be more evolutionary than revolutionary. And I think the last 8 months has caused us to be a little bit more revolutionary than we would have imagined. When George Floyd's untimely murder occurred, we had 128 of our hockey players stand up and say that this was a human rights issue and that this was something that we ought to take a stand on, something that we had not seen in the sport of hockey, players actually taking a stand on social issues. And I think that that has positioned us to really think differently about how welcoming our sport will be for future fans and those fans in waiting. So exciting times in the sport of hockey.
Yeah, so well said, Kim. This concept of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, we've all been challenged with that. And I think the tragic death of George Floyd has caused all of us to step back and say, how do we get a little bit uncomfortable in a conversation that forces us to be good at listening, to learn from one another, and then to commit to take actions. It's one of the things that I, as a B teamer, am really proud of, as Verizon has taken a very strong position on racial justice and our role in making sure that we have those conversations, that we do take action. And it's with partners like you that we can really be proud to do that work, because we realize there's so much more to do. So thank you for bringing that conversation to life and reminding us that it's okay to be uncomfortable. We just have to get comfortable there. Renie, how about you?
Well, when I think about when we were all at home, we had to think about the draft and how to reimagine the draft. Not in addition to looking forward to the season. And I would say, Tami, Verizon was a huge, huge partner on helping us pull the draft off. We wouldn't have been able to do it without our partners, since every single human that participated in the draft did it from home, right? Yeah. And so the one thing for us as leaders here, we've had to really think about making sure that we're having empathy for our employees, because since March, if we think about it, and we've all had virtual calls, we're all of a sudden in each other's homes. Yeah. All the other, we all have other stuff, right? But typically when you're at work, you don't talk about the other stuff. People don't know about the other stuff. But all of a sudden we were on draft planning calls, and I see the other stuff. I see the little kid. I see the other things. And so we hear the family members that were affected by COVID. We see the pain of the murder of George Floyd in the eyes of our employees and our players. And so it's been very important for us to not just to be there for the employees, have flexibility, but to really listen and provide a place of employment that we can be a little bit of everything for them at this moment in time, because we're asking them to show up every day and give 110%. And we have to be thoughtful. And I think for many people, you feel like work never ends when you're at home, because you roll out of bed and your computer is right there. And so making sure that we're finding a balance, not just for myself as a leader here, but for all of our employees here, and being there for them when a family member is sick with COVID, when they're trying to figure out how to balance virtual school, which is so hard, by the way. And so that's something that typically as corporations, you're business focused, and we're clearly got our eyes on the prize with business, but we're also really thinking about how we can embrace our employee and the culture here, and making sure that really thinking about them first.
Yeah, such a powerful word, this empathy. And we've invited ourselves into our employees' homes, and that separation that has traditionally been there is gone. It's about integration. It's about a common purpose. It's about fighting for recovery. And I think that empathy is something, as leaders, remembering how important that is, such a powerful reminder. So thank you. Lisa, over to you.
I'm struck by what you all just said, but one thing about the National Women's Soccer League that's a little different is we're a single entity, LLC, and so my employees are the players. We're a small business, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, because I think that small businesses are having incredible challenges, but there's also a real advantage to being a small business in this environment. But, my first concern was not just our staff. We have a tiny staff, and of course I was concerned about them. It's that I'm going to ask my employees to go play a contact sport. I'm going to ask them to do it. And I think the way that we started to communicate in this world and create solutions for our employees, it had to be innovative. And it was innovative from step. We completely revised our competition. We didn't go into a regular season. We went right into a single elimination knockout tournament. Very different, much more like the Olympics in Europe. One thing that we're very proud of is that we brought 230 of our female players into the bubble. We allowed them to opt out. But you know what? We created a special solution for the moms. And I know everybody here on this phone, they would think first about that. But we created solutions for moms, including a special medical testing protocol for COVID for children, so that they could play in the bubble, because we didn't know enough then as an industry to say bubble, home and away. There were lots of experimentation. What I did know is that our women demanded as safe an environment as possible, because they weren't just thinking of them, they were thinking of their kids and families. So they came into the bubble, we protected them. And so you start to go through this checklist of reinventing every single corner of your business. And then you come out of it, because a bubble is not sustainable. It's not. You can't live life in a bubble. You can't do business in a bubble. Then you go and you say, okay, how are we going to reinvent to the future, which is the journey we're on right now. And so for me as the commissioner sitting there, beforehand, I'd never been a commissioner before. It was really thinking end to end. I negotiated a full year employment solution with my PA, and we did it, literally in 2 weeks. When I had employee and staff Zoom calls, there were 230 players on that Zoom call. And they were saying, wait a minute, you want me to go on the field, play a contact sport? How is it safe for me? How is it safe for my family? So we had to reimagine every single thing that we were doing and do it on a real timeline. So to say I've had a few sleepless nights, I think is the understatement of the world. And I'm sure it shows. I'm sure it shows.
No, you look fabulous. Remind yourself, it's take a deep breath.
From here up, guys. From here up. You all be fabulous mid chest up.
Yeah, we all get to look into those cameras every single day and check out the wrinkles and all that comes with life. But Lisa, such an important reminder of the role that women have played in this crisis. So many women on the front line, so many women who are educators. Renie, you talked about educating kids at home. So many women that are the CEO of their home, and yet I think women have indirectly been affected so much more than men, families more broadly, but women because they carry the burden and the joy of being the CEO in their home. And so being conscious of how do we make sure we care for those that are on the front line is really an important reminder. And I think women have found creative and imaginative ways to do that. And I think businesses have found empathy for how we imagine allowing, things to happen at home that we might not have thought about it. I know for Verizon, we've said, take time to be the caregiver, take time to get your kids started with school, take time to, because that becomes important, because you really are the employee and the business come together. I'm going to just put a reminder out for those of you that are watching us online to go to slido.com, code WIB, Women in Business, and enter in your questions. I've got one last question for this group, and then I'm going to turn it over for your Q&A. And Lisa, I'm going to start with you. How did you get into sports, and what is it about your leadership characteristics that have made you successful?
Well, I hesitate to say how long ago it was, but I really hesitate. I started on the sponsor side. So I was very much in the sponsor position, and what I learned, I think that I took away from that was how that when you're on the other side, when you're on the property side, you really need to think about how your property helps the entity solve their problems. And how do we really start to think about that? So I think that was something that I took there, but I got that broad framework. But my real full-time job in sports came at the NFL. I was like Kim, where I came from corporate America, wasn't really a longtime sports person, but I knew a little bit about technology because they hired me from IBM, and we had been very much on the front line in terms of using internet to transform our businesses in the 90s. I hesitate to say, but late 90s. So I joined the NFL, which is where I met Renie, and Renie and I have a long and very special relationship, I think, and then spent years in the Olympic movement. So what about my leadership? I think I tend to be a very creative, collaborative executive in sports. And I think I've honed that skills working in the global environment where you really, and I don't mean political skills in the worst sense of the word. I mean, you need to hone your political skills because you're taking delegations from free countries into Russia. You're taking them onto the front line between South and North Korea. And you need to understand that as we go into the world, you really need to see the world from others' points of view. You may not agree with it, and you can be strong and assertive in that point of view, but understanding that. And I think that's something that's distinguished me in that I'm able to be collaborative and solution-oriented and see things not just from my point of view.
I love it. It sounds like we need to send you to Washington, D.C. Okay, I'm not going to go there. Kim,
Remember I started this with Aruba.
Aruba. Kim, what's made you successful as a leader?
Oh, my goodness. If I boiled it down to a couple of traits, I would say it begins with understanding that leaders have to be good followers as well. And I think that's an important trait when you're leading a team, that you engage in fellowship as well as leadership. I also think strong leaders are humble. And I think regardless of how high you go, you have to always remember that they're building blocks that lead to success, and you have to make sure that you are able to create the same pathways for others. I think that I am a visionary. I'm always, and I think throughout my career, I've always, had a big vision for where the businesses that I ran needed to go, and would build consensus in helping people on that journey way to get there. And I think that's been something that's unique about the way I've led. And then I think compassionate leadership is really important. Being compassionate and understanding and putting yourself in the shoes of others. I think these are all very, very important traits that have led to my particular brand of leadership.
Humble, compassion. It's awesome to hear how you bring it all together and how successful you've been. Kim, thank you. Renie, why don't you bring us home on this question about leadership? What's made you successful?
I'll do leadership. And then at one point too, when I was in college, I wanted to be a writer. And so I didn't know that working in sports, I thought that was Jerry Maguire, Bob Costas. So my first job out of college, I was an assistant for, at the time, David Baker. He's the Pro Football Hall of Fame president now, but at the time he was the commissioner of the Arena Football League. And so my job with him, first day, he's like, I need you to go get my laundry. I need you to balance my checkbook, and I need you to call NFL owners and see if they want to buy arena football teams. And so I worked there for 9 years, and then I came to the National Football League, and that's where I met Lisa. And when we think about leadership, one thing that was amazing with Lisa that really changed my entire career is that she was the CMO here, and she was great. And one day I was walking down the hall, and I knocked on her door, and I was like, hey, Lisa, I'm Renie. I had just started probably a couple of weeks prior. And I admired Lisa. She was CMO. She's an executive here. And I just talked to her about what's it like, all the questions, work-life balance, what's it like working here? There's so many men. And she was so gracious and gave me so much time. And it was a very wonderful conversation. And I remember leaving that was so nice. I didn't have to check in with her assistant. She had time. She just open door policy. And what was interesting, a couple of days later, I got a call that Lisa had recommended me to be on a working group at the National Football League that was a special project about women in football. And within that special project, it was a core group of women. We got to present to the executives and likely have an opportunity that many didn't get to have. And that was a game changer for me because I got exposure to the executives. I got to present to the commissioner, and it changed my entire career.
And she's now chief revenue officer.
I know,
of the biggest league in the United States. I mean,
amazing.
It's amazing. Like she just like needed that little open door, and her talent is what did it.
Yeah, that's what it takes.
She championed me, right?
Yeah.
Just like that. And so one of my things that I learned that I try to do is what Lisa did for me. And so make time for other women, make time even for the questions, the work questions, the professional questions, the personal questions, make time and make sure that I'm championing those women that have that talent, that have that opportunity, that raise their hand. It's really important because I do have an amazing job, and man, it was really hard to get here. It wasn't like it was simple. And I think all these ladies would say, man, it was hard to get here, and it's hard having the job. Yeah. But if I can help give back in a way for others, it's definitely a responsibility I have. And I'm so thankful that Lisa did that for me.
What a great story, and such a reminder of our role as leaders, our role as women to be each other's cheerleaders and to open that door. You know, last night we had a chance to hear from Shelley Archibald, who is on our board, one of our board members, and she's launching a book next Monday, Unapologetically Ambitious. And she reminded us of the power of lifting each other up and finding cheerleaders. And, you know, at least it sounds like you were a great cheerleader. It's created this commitment, Renie, for you to do it. And Kim, I see you nodding your head. It's what we have to do for each other, particularly in a COVID environment. So much to talk about, so little time, and yet I know we've committed to making sure we get a couple of questions. So Jeremy, I'm going to turn it to you. I know you're watching for questions.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, a lot of what you all are covering, by the way, great feedback from folks watching online, how inspiring them up. You talk about empathy, you talk about, serving one another, you talk about all that. But some questions I want to dig into here, Kim, I'm going to throw this one your way, and then everyone else feel free to jump in. This is from Camilla Hernandez. What would you say to a woman who is just beginning to get involved in the sports industry? What do you consider vital to move up into industry?
Yeah, I get this question often, and I'm so happy about it because I think I am a poster child for people that come from outside of the sports industry and how important it is to infuse talent at every level of an organization. Often when we talk about talent within any industry, we always think about entry-level talent, but I think it is so important, particularly for underrepresented groups, for women of color, to see people like myself at a senior level, because as Billie Jean King says, if you see it, you believe you can be it. And I think that I have seen so many talented young women of color come to the NHL over the past 3 years because they've seen me there as a role model and they know it can happen. So I would say that, bring your skills and competencies. Make sure you have your A game. I often talk about the 3 Ps: preparation, passion, and purpose, and the alignment of those things. And don't be dissuaded because you don't have a background in sport. I think that we, in all sports, are understanding that skills are much more transferable than we ever thought, and there's an opportunity for you to contribute.
Fantastic. Here's one. I'm going to mix in some of the personal stuff and some of the sports here. The next question is for Lisa. This came from Michael. The soccer league is great, and their COVID-free tournament largely got overlooked by some major sports networks and wasn't easily viewable by its fans. How do women's sports get on the same level?
It's a great question. And right now, the statistic is that women's sports are about 4% of the total sports coverage. So it's I don't know what the right level is, if there even is one, but I know it's under where it needs to be. And I think just looking, when we worked with our partners, CBS and Twitch, to create our broadcast deals. So this year has been a busy wheel. We launched 2 broadcast deals. We created a tournament. We signed sponsors because we needed to. But the broadcast deals with CBS and Twitch have been the difference makers. And So one of the things we did in August when we came back from our bubble tournament is, I think everybody on this call probably knew the college football landscape was going to change. I don't think anybody knew what was going to happen, but they have a very special challenge because they're students, they're living on campus, and that's very, so I'd arranged a meeting, on August 10th with CBS right after, and we were just going to sit down and maybe we were going to talk about things, but I kind of had a feeling like the schedule was going to blow up. And literally in 2 days, there was an opening in their schedule because of college football. And I took it. And moving mountains to get owners, players, medical protocols, home and away, literally so we could announce it 2.5 weeks later, because it is so valuable to get our sport and our players in front of a mass audience. Mm-hmm. And you can, let's be simple, in the US it's broadcast, but I want to also talk about Twitch and our international. So just because of what we did in the bubble and what we did here, we've had the top 5 of our most viewed broadcasts of all time this year, when it's a challenged ratings year for everybody. Let's face it. I don't know what people are doing. Maybe they're doing their laundry, they're working from home. They're doing a lot right now, but they are tuning into sports. But we have the top 5, and we've got to earn our way into that limelight. Twitch internationally, we're now doing 600,000 to 700,000 live views for games, which I knew our sport was the best in the world. It's just get it out there and show it to people. So I've got to continue to work to do that. And then honestly, it's the hard work to build the ecosystem of monetization around it. And we're still really early in our journey. We're only 8 years old, but we've got a long way to go to build up the sustainability of the National Women's Soccer League. And that's what's on my plate right now. And I'm very, humbled by that task, let me tell you.
Yeah. Quick, another question. I'll start with Renie on this one. You think of the football experience on a Sunday, Thursday, or Monday, when people are tailgating and you at the pre-COVID stages and you were supporting all those small businesses. How do each one of you look at this now as an opportunity to support those businesses in all the towns and cities where you operate?
Really closely with all of our clubs. And as you know, in every market, it's a little bit different. Some markets were able to have some fans at stadiums, other markets were not. And so working really closely with all 32 of our clubs and understanding where those key areas are, as well as our national partners. So as we look at, Verizon, Anheuser-Busch, Pepsi, really understanding the key areas of focus that they have. And what we learned, especially at Draft and kind of like this panel today, there's this whole new area of virtual engagement that we really didn't take advantage of before. Like when COVID is over and the world is back to this new normal that's going to be way better than what it was before, partners are going to come and leverage us and say, hey, I need retail, I need television, I need social, and I need virtual. What's my virtual execution going to be? Because this isn't going away, guys. And so now this intimate engagement that we have with partners is something that we're seeing that hopefully we're able to help in those key markets. We also have several partners that are working in underserved communities, really focused on those areas of the digital divide and making sure that, like Verizon does so well, and we're working with many of our players within the Players Coalition that give back into key markets, how we're providing that support there. Also servicing those local businesses too. And so I know I was a little all over the place with the answer for the question, but it's one that hits a lot of different areas that we're doing now, and I think we'll continue to do post-COVID days for sure.
And Renie, maybe I just jump in here for a minute because you touched on something I think is so powerful, and that is this concept of a virtual engagement. As we're now beginning to reimagine and redefine what a viewing experience looks like, it goes from being part of the crowd to defining and making this a very personal engagement with sports. And we'll never go back to what it was before. We'll only move forward with our shared and our learned experiences. And I think that's the thing that makes it particularly exciting, is our ability to redefine and reimagine and transform real time, but to take those learnings and lean forward as we think about technology innovations like 5G. We're so excited about what we can do with 5G in stadiums, 5G kind of across the country, because it is transforming everything, starting with those virtual experiences. And I can't imagine better partners than all of you to really work together on how we transform the experience. Jeremy, back to you. Sorry, I had to just jump in there.
No,
that was great.
This is what this conversation's about. It's connecting and figuring out where we all go. I've got one more to wrap up here for Kim. Kim, someone, they want to follow in your footsteps. How do you go from where you were into the sports industry for people who want to make that move?
I can't say that I can give you a roadmap because it's had a lot of twists and turns. But I think the consistency through my 30+ year career has been the ability to pivot, and I think that is such an important skill and competency that bodes well in any industry and any job. I throughout my career have always been willing to take lateral moves in order to build a skill set, and not every move has been my favorite job, but I felt like it was a job that was necessary to build the total portfolio, if you will, of my skill set that I think has now served me well. So, be willing to take the job that you don't like, I think is an important message that I would deliver. And always be humble in doing the best you can, even in a situation that you don't love. And I think opportunities often come your way.
I would add, if I could just jump, I would add on that, like if you can sell lemonade, you can sell orange juice, right? And so there's a little bit of sports as a business, but it is just an amazing, passionate business. So I think I would also add on to that, like become an expert within your space. I mean, we've got accountants and lawyers, like lots of lawyers, right? Marketing execs, social execs, HR executives here. I mean, every function of business lives within sport. And that's something that if you just love spreadsheets, well, guess what? We do a lot of spreadsheets here. And so I think that there's opportunities for people as they think about their expertise and really those strengths that can lend itself to a variety of different careers, be it entertainment or sport or, traditional business as well.
And I think I would just add to that, because I think that's a really important point, Renie, is that it cuts both ways. I think sport has also recognized that people don't have to grow up in the sport or have had a history in the sport to fall in love with the sport. And I think that's a new story within hockey where people are becoming passionate. I call it fans in waiting, those that are to fall in love or have fallen in love with hockey because of how they see hockey changing and transforming.
Great. Thank you all for that. And one quick thing before I turn it back over to you, Tami. This came from Twitter at Resolute5954. Amazing women leaders. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of your day and to hear your insights. I reflect that. Thank you all so much. And Tami, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, Jeremy, thank you. And what fun it has been. And I feel like we've just gotten started in the conversation, hearing from such powerful women that openly share about have some fun along the way, be humble, be compassionate, be each other's cheerleaders. And we've talked about how do we redefine what the future looks like, recognizing that we're in a real crisis right now. And you've heard from these leaders that have reimagined everything from their sport to the world in which they work, to empathy for kids at home, families at home. And then really what I really appreciate is this expectation that we can redefine society, how we think about how we show up on behalf of critical items like social and racial injustice. It takes women, it takes communities, it takes people coming together to redefine, reimagine, and make the world a much better place. And you heard from these incredible women. So Renie, Lisa, Kim, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being exceptional partners. I wish you and your families health and good and peace as we continue to battle and redefine and reimagine. You're terrific partners. Thank you.
Thanks,
Tami. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.